Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Terry On. I'm your host, Mandy Ramos, and I have a special guest with me here today. You know, I did tell a really riveting story about a traffic circle on the last episode, and I did talk for probably 9.5 minutes straight on my viewpoint of this incident. So I thought it was only fair to bring on the other person involved in the traffic circle debacle, Jeo Ramos, my husband, also known just as Jeo Ramos. Nobody's out here saying Jeo Ramos except on here. So anyway, I thought, you know what? We should have Geo on and just, if he wanted to say anything real quick about the traffic, he can't say the whole time. We have stuff we have to get to, but I did invite him on just for a few minutes. So what's up, babe?
What's going on, my queen?
Well, I would like to know, just any thoughts on the traffic. We haven't discussed the traffic circle incident since it happened. So just in your processing, is there just like anything you want to say? Did you feel like when you heard it on last week's episode, like, was it a fair assessment? Did more come to light? Did you realize, you know, that you don't know how to go around traffic? Just what do you want to say?
Well, you know, in light of the fact that the rest of the episode, you spent it talking about accepting feedback.
Yeah. I just wondered if that episode landed with you. That episode was actually just for you.
I don't know that I need to defend myself right now. Otherwise, I'd look like a fool.
Oh, so. Nobody said defend. I said it's just like any more details you'd like to offer. Like maybe just like on a scale of 1 to 10, how genuinely confused were you during this argument? Like 10 being the most confused.
Mira, mi vida, mi amor, you're so adorable right there in that chair. That's the main reason I'm here. I just want to watch you speak.
Babe, people aren't here for this.
Yes, that's what they're here for. This is what they signed up for.
Keep it right.
There were probably two things that when I was listening to your version of the story, I thought, I wonder if everyone wants to know this part, though.
Oh, wait. What part?
The first part was that I actually was considering the frustration of the driver in the truck to maybe have to downshift. So you were talking about the size of the truck and how like nobody was out. I was solving a problem that didn't exist. I drove a truck that size, if you remember, you know, for the one company I worked with, cutting down trees for a short season of my life. And I remember whenever I would have some kind of momentum in that truck and I would have to slow down, how embarrassing it was for me to have to like recreate the momentum and then maybe stall because it was a stick shift. I was trying to like be a good citizen, a good American.
So you were triggered at the traffic circle. You were triggered.
I was trying to help my man out. I was like, listen, I don't want him to stall and then have to make eye contact with all of us watching him in case he's coming all the way around and I get in his way and cut him off. So yeah, no, I probably was low-key triggered and thought I don't want to mess up my man's momentum.
There's so much I want to say right now, but I don't think anybody's tuning in to hear me argue with you because my case is actually pretty solid. There's a few holes in your story and it just doesn't line up. But anyway, okay, so that's one thing. What else?
The second part of it.
Because what you have to know about Geo is it will never just be 1 point. Never. No, there's always a minimum of 2. There's not a maximum, usually.
A third one just came to mind.
Exactly. So usually if I say, Geo, what do you think? It's like, well, 3 things. I mean, immediately. And I just think like, wow, I could barely remember what I was saying. So he always has a list. I don't know if I said this, but did I say this before on here? That even when we got married, the vows were in a list?
Oh, yeah. I had bullet points.
I've already shared this about you. Have I already said this, though?
You have.
To the masses?
The people know me very well in my bullet point lists.
Wait a second. I should jot down what I talk about because you remember how the first episode was like, hey, everybody, I repeat myself multiple times and I only talk about the same 3 topics. I'm afraid that might be what's happening here.
Well, you know, you would be in line with some very good people. Have you heard of the Bible?
Okay. Anyway, what was your second thing?
A lot of recurring messages in the Bible.
True. But mine currently is about you making lists, which is like less, I don't know, inspiring. So, okay, what's your second thing about the traffic circle?
The second thing about the traffic circle was that this is going to be so ironic. I wasn't attempting to defend myself as much as I was just trying to explain what I was thinking at the time.
That's what defensive people say.
Yeah, no, there's no point. No, pero en realidad, like I was really...
Okay, keep going.
I was actually like, and I don't know if you remember in the moment, I said the phrase, I was just trying to tell you what I was thinking at the time of doing it. And I got to a point in our conversation during our conflict where I realized, okay, wait, enough trying to defend myself. Let me just throw this out there. I'm just trying to tell you what I was thinking at the time. Mixed with still a little bit of defensiveness. So I'll own that. But there was that part that I think, going to the conversation of accepting feedback, I think that's a better way to communicate in conflict and in accepting feedback rather than trying to defend the action. Maybe offering, and that's what I was trying to do, but it was clunky and I didn't really do it well, and I'm sorry. I love you so much, my babe.
I love you too, man.
Just trying to explain, this is what I was thinking at the time. Right or wrong, I'm just giving you what
mostly what ends up happening in our conflicts is this, and I think we're not alone. This is every couple probably, is that for one person, it's not that deep. Like, not a lot of thought went into it. And for the other person, we have created an entire spreadsheet about what your motives were at the traffic circle and how you executed all your motives. Yeah. And how it's kind of dark. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot that one person assigns a lot and the other person's like, literally gave zero thought to this. I find that that's normally our dynamic, is that one of us, I don't want to name names, one of us fills in a lot of gaps, and then one of us always responds with, I didn't think about it that hard. And then I'm like, precisely. You didn't think about it that hard. Oh, wait, I just gave away who was who.
You did. Pero mira, can I mi amor, you're an amazing wife and a great communicator. I love you.
Thank you.
I love you so much. And I think that maybe I could reverse this a little bit because it's not always you. Sometimes it's me. It was me last night.
That's right.
In the kitchen.
I wasn't going to tell everybody.
Talking. I could tell everybody. I could
wow.
myself.
Well, I just thought I was hosting this podcast. Sorry, I didn't know that you were taking this a different direction.
No, I don't want you to, be portrayed.
Listen, it's 80-20.
Painted and,
we're basically like a healthy diet.
Yeah.
It's 80% me, 20% you. Sometimes you pipe up and you get weird, but mostly it's me.
Well, last night it was 80% me, where I was attempting to give you, some vulnerable info on my past about how I lived for about 10 years of my life. And then you chimed in with your perspective, your experience of something similar. And all of a sudden, I went to a place where I interpreted you chiming in and you giving your experience as trying to invalidate what I was saying. And I dressed you in that motive. I shut down. Was I mean? I don't think I was mean. I think I was just like,
I think I have a pretty broad definition of mean.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I would just assume anything that's not the nicest thing that you've ever done for me is mean. It's just like...
No pressure.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think I kind of shut down a little bit, and I was the one who overthought it, dressed you in a motive, gave it this giant sized problem in my head that really... I think you were actually just trying to connect with what I was saying and then offer some perspective. And it was very gentle. You didn't invalidate me in any way, but somehow my mind went there for some reason. And it could be something that I need to work on and discover about myself. But in that instant, I created a conflict where there was no conflict.
Yeah, that is actually true. I do feel good about that I wasn't the one causing the problem last night. Actually, I'd rather be the one that causes the problem because you're a much better forgiver than I am. Like, if I cause the problem and then realize it and then say sorry, immediately everything's fine. If you cause a problem, I'm like, this is going to take 3 to 4 weeks to wrap up here. I'm going to need some time to reconnect with you. So honestly, I'd rather be the one that causes a problem. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I feel like you had to have considered the costs of getting married. And if you didn't, here we are. So you're stuck. Don't get sappy. This is a family podcast. Okay, we have to lay some ground. He's my first guest. I didn't actually lay any ground rules, but now I know that I need to be clear on how we talk on this thing. How many terms of endearment is one allowed to use in one episode?
Oof.
Nope, don't start. I can see it right now. You're racking your brain for all of them. Okay.
My queen, I don't know that I can put a limit on my love for you.
Okay. Oh my goodness. I feel so embarrassed and cared for. Okay. Anything else about the traffic circle?
Yeah, the third thing, which is gonna sound
Wait, we didn't
very
get to
petty.
the third thing yet?
No, I only did the two.
All right.
Because remember, I said a third one just came to mind.
Okay.
The third thing, am I saying third correctly?
Yes.
You often tell me I say it weird. Third. With all the love in your voice and care in your heart that I sound intelligent.
I wonder who's steering the ship of this episode today. It feels like it's getting hijacked and I don't really love it. So what's your third point?
Was that I don't know that it was that long of a time that the person behind us had to wait. I think it was at maximum 6 seconds.
Hey, that is the time I gave in my episode.
Okay, it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
I said it probably was 6 seconds.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's a long time.
That felt important for you to bring up.
Yeah, because we're on a podcast that highlights the delays of life and how in the delay there's
were you
blessing.
trying to teach that person to tarry on?
And yep, it was free marketing for the podcast.
I misunderstood.
So yeah, maybe we blessed that person by delaying him 6 seconds, and maybe they avoided something bad.
Oh, well, what a blessing you were to everybody. Final question. When you dropped me off at the house and then went back out for the creamer and to fill up my gas tank, was it to kill me with kindness, or was it because you needed a minute to be able to look at me again?
Well, first of all, could we cancel the phrase kill someone with kindness? That sounds
You know what I mean, though, right?
I do. I love you so much.
Like when never mind, I'm not gonna explain it to you. Go ahead.
No, I just, I was just trying to, you know what I'm saying?
What? Tell me the real answer. Did you need a minute to like me again?
So, okay, no, listen, I never stopped liking you. I, just did not enjoy being where you were. for a minute. No, pero en realidad, like I said that twice now. I think that's gonna be my new thing. En realidad.
Okay, because I was gonna give feedback on that when we're off the air about that transitional phrase, but that's fine. Continue.
Is it cool?
I don't love it.
Okay, I'll
It's too much, I think.
Okay, I'll kill it with kindness. I knew that getting the coffee creamer was the thing we were going to, and because of that whole conflict, we didn't get the coffee creamer.
Yeah.
And I knew two things were going to happen. One, we were going to get to the point where the coffee creamer was needed later on when we were pouring our afternoon
junk fest
cup of coffee.
Yeah.
By the way, we often drink our morning coffee void of creamer and sugar. It's usually very good. We're very snobby about our coffee in the morning. But in the afternoon, flavored creamer.
Wild.
So anyway, I knew that whenever we poured our cup of coffee in the afternoon again,
yeah,
whether it was that day or the next day, and we were looking for the creamer,
yeah,
it was going to bring back this conflict because it was going to bring up that we don't have the creamer because we got into a conflict.
Okay, so you went to the store out of fear. Got it. Next thing.
I didn't want to relive and revisit the conversation. And secondly, I thought, okay, you know what? Like, if I can just do something different, if I could just step away rather than try to fix it here and now. Let me just step away. Let me give you some space. Let me give me some space to really put it into perspective. Pray. Ask the Lord. Lord.
Did you? You prayed at the store?
I honestly did.
Okay.
Honestly did. Ask the Lord, humble me, give me clarity.
Eyes open or closed? How committed were you walking through that dairy aisle?
Not very committed, I guess, because I wanted to find the creamer and not take too long. Anyway, so anyway, yeah, no, I wanted to create the space for me to come to the Lord and ask the Lord for feedback on me.
Yeah.
And how I handled the feedback you were giving. Because whether or not I found it was valid wasn't the point. There's this saying, you actually introduced it to me. Do I want to be right, or do I want to be happy? Do I want to be right, or do I want to be connected?
I love asking people that question, but you do know my answer, right?
What's your answer?
Being right makes me happy.
No, that's right. That's right. There you have it, people.
I'm just kidding. I do ask myself that a lot. I mean, being right does make me, I can't say happy. I don't know. There's a whole thing. I mean, Googling about red yield signs mattered to me, so I got to get to the bottom of whatever that is. But anyway, continue. So I often say, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yeah. And I just, I wanted the Lord's feedback on, Lord, what is the thing that I need to let go of so that I stay connected to my wife, so that it's less about being right, less about caring whether or not my stopping at the yield sign was valid, my care for the truck driver having to regain momentum was valid, whether it was maybe a nice delay for the person behind us to wait a 6
nice
second
delay.
See how I'm painting all of this?
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't about being right about any of that. It was about being connected. And I think that it's a tricky area, which is why we need to come to the Lord, right? Because I think you can swing over into muting yourself and never actually being honest, right? Like maybe somebody listening on here, I know you've been in relationships where we've like shut down versions of ourselves and parts of ourselves for the sake of keeping connection, but we're not being honest. You talk about dishonest harmony.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I mean,
Brene Brown always talks about it. It's like, we want to belong so bad. If we create this version of ourselves that gets us to belong in a certain group of people, we end up betraying ourselves and who we are. And so usually what ends up happening, at least for me, when I do that, is like, I don't feel fulfilled anyway, belonging in a group of people where I know that if I showed up as the real Mandy, y'all would leave. And that's an unsettling feeling that I'm sure just is like the breeding ground for anxiety. So yeah, like we definitely both value being able to show up as the full versions of ourselves. But I think that even can get like misconstrued or something. I don't know. When I think back on my first marriage, I think like my thought at the time, and maybe this was the immature version of that, was like, well, you get the full version of me, so I no longer need to edit myself, which translates to I no longer need to try to be nice. Because you, in a marriage, and this is what I really believe, like we agreed that we could just kind of be the like uncut versions of ourselves and we would still have each other at the end of the day. I no longer believe that. I think, living like that was definitely contributed to the demise of my first marriage, because who wants that? Who's signing up for someone just having a bunch of rough edges without the pursuit of making them smoothed out? I don't think anybody really signs up for that, because we all have children, and that's what parenting is. Parenting is just like a lot of, well, we don't all have children. Many of us have children. And a lot of parenting is just like these jagged edges, and people will say like, oh, well, you get the worst of your kid because they feel the safest with you. And sometimes I'm kind of like, hey, here's my hot take for today. Sometimes you get the worst of your kids because you have a bratty kid. Sometimes maybe they need some sort of boundary, something on the other side of that whackness, But anyway, that's a talk for another day. But I don't ever think all the time when my kids are like yelling at me or whatever, giving me an attitude, I never think to myself like, well, it's just because I've created such a safe space. I'm like, yeah, but this doesn't translate to the real world. And also I'm a real human. I'm not a robot. Like I have feelings. And you should know that about every human you talk to, including your mom, including your dad, including your stepdad, your grandparents, all of it. There's a level of respect that you owe people, like especially the person who brought you into this world, at the top of that list.
Right.
And so I don't think it's wrong to even say to our children, like, yeah, you have this full version of yourself and you certainly will feel the full range of emotions, but that doesn't give you permission to use your full range of reactions and behaviors on people.
Ooh.
And so that's the part that I'm trying to parent, I guess, is the part where it's like, I mean, I've seen grown adults interacting with their parents and treating them like garbage. So this isn't something you obviously grow out of just naturally on your own.
Right.
It's a pattern you take with you into adulthood where you're just a turd. That's the best way I can describe it. And so one time I was playing tennis at the park, and I took the girls, and I'm just watching this grown woman interact with her mom. And she's like so incredibly rude to her mom. And I mean, this woman was like, had to have been in her late 20s. So this isn't like her brain's fully developed at this point, hopefully. Maybe she's a late bloomer.
Yeah.
But just so rude. And I just watched her mom take it. And that dynamic is a real dynamic. And there's so many parents that just take it. And I'm not saying to pick a battle for everything, but I am saying we do sometimes tell people how to treat us by how we respond. So if I'm just going to let you lash out at me all the time and I'm going to take it, why would you do anything different? And so my hot take for today is I don't buy into that saying that, our kids are their worst versions of themselves because we're safe places. And I don't think we should treat our spouses like that either. I think at the end of the day, we still have a responsibility to the people we live with. It's all of our home, right? Like all of us live here. All of us want a safe space to be in. So why do we get the right to just walk around and like be the worst version without any consequences, without any feedback from the people we live with? Like, hey, you're not fun when you're like this. This is our home too. We would like to walk into a peaceful place. Like, let's all agree that when we live in a shared space, we need to figure out how to share the space. And so I think the best gift we can offer the people we're in relationships with is like, hey, I'm doing my own work of being sanctified, which I guess is an ironic statement because like the Holy Spirit is who sanctifies. It's not like our own work, but like I'm committed to becoming a more softened edged version of myself. And I do that through accepting the feedback of people who interact with me. I do that through being self-aware, like being able to look at what I did and own it, right? I've talked about all of this, so I don't want to keep repeating myself. And this was just supposed to be our intro, but I fear this is developing into a whole episode.
Give the people what they need, babe.
Okay. Fear is a strong word. I'm not afraid. But anyway, I said
That's
it.
right.
Yeah.
Perfect love casts out fear.
Okay.
There's no fear
All right.
in love.
Again, who's leading this podcast? So the thing is, so that's my hot take for today. I don't even know how I got there. What in the world did you say? Was it something about feedback or something about, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Wanting to be,
authentic.
Wanting the gray area of answering that question. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Do you want to be right? Do you want to stay connected? And how that could be a slippery slope into muting yourself if you're so hung up on being happy and connected. Because that turns into codependency. I will say all the things to keep us connected despite me having this like deep issue with this
Well,
thing.
then I would argue that's not real connection.
It's not real connection. And so, but I think as an individual, when you ask yourself that question, do I want to be right or do I want to stay connected? Well, like what if there's a third option? What if there's this third option of like, well, I want to be honest. Right. I hope that through my honesty, we stay connected. I hope that through my honesty, some justice comes out of it. Right. God is really big on justice, but sometimes we can swing one side, right, where we want to be so right. And justice is only this version where I end up on top. I end up happy with the result. And that's the only way to see the justice, right? Or I want to stay connected. And the only way I see connection is if I mute anything that'll stir the waters. I don't want to bother my spouse. I don't want to bother you with this or burden you with this. And if I mention it, it might stir the pot and disconnect us. But I think like when we can be honest, I think that is a more honorable way. And so that's why I think that for me was me leaving to the store to buy the creamer and also fill the tank up with gas. That one was just a bonus. That one was just, I know the car needs the gas. But
I was a little tight about the gas station you picked. I'm not going to lie. I didn't want to have to bring it up here, but you've mentioned it now like 3 times. I'm like, I'm not going to, you always take it to that gas station and it's like the most expensive one, isn't it?
Maybe.
But then this is what I do. I talk myself off the ledge. I'm like, yo, it's like we're talking about pennies at this point. And also the act of kindness cancels that out. So anyway, just so you know, that is the softening of my edges, right? My first thought is, wow, he picked that gas station. Then my second thought is, why would you ask that question? And then my third thought is, just say thank you, dummy. So that's what I did.
Don't talk about my wife like that.
Yeah, well, sometimes
don't call my wife a dummy.
Yeah, sometimes she needs that. Well, okay. So honesty, you said something, but it made me think like, yo, honesty is actually the only way. And it's not honesty in the sense of like, you say every thought you have. We talked about that before, right? It's not being unfiltered. But this idea of honesty in a relationship is the only way to true connection. So, you know, when you talked earlier about like, I don't want to burden you with that. I don't want to, you know, whatever, because I want to stay connected. It's like, well, I actually don't think you have much of a connection anyway, because true connection can withstand conflict. If a conflict or a disagreement or an honest question breaks that connection, you weren't very connected anyway, because a conflict should not result in like punishment. And I think like an honest question shouldn't result in punishment. And when I say punishment, I mean withdrawing from someone emotionally or unloading on them emotionally, right? Because they asked a question or because they had an honest thought or feedback. Yeah. Obviously, the way we deliver it matters, our tone, our body language, all of that, right? But honesty in a relationship should continue to make it stronger. Not be the thing that tears you apart. And I think this is what I want to talk about today, which was like, how do you help, you know, we're raising some teenagers and it's like, how do I help her? How do I help him recognize dysfunction, right? These dysfunctional patterns in relationships as they're dating and even in their friendships. How do you help them identify that? And then I think a lot of adults don't know how to identify that. I think we put up with a lot, or we don't really have another example to follow. And so we don't feel settled or truly connected or fully known, but we don't know any other way. And I think about, at least, you know, for me, I think through, how do you know, I sat in my therapist's office once and I was thinking about my kids, right? So I know there are many single moms that listen to this podcast, and I've heard like, hey, thanks for just like helping me feel seen and heard and known or whatever as a single mom, not feeling alone. I don't feel so alone. Or thanks for like reminding me that there's hope for my kids. And so I just want to speak to that. And this isn't just for single parents. This is for all the parents and all the people, even if you don't have kids, because essentially, I was asking my therapist, like, okay, but, you know, I'm worried that how will my kids not just accept dysfunctional treatment in a relationship, because that's what they're getting sometimes, you know, from my co-parent. And this was when they were a lot younger, and I feel like it was all these like formative moments. And her response was like, Mandy, you are committed to emotional health. It takes one healthy parent to influence her kids or his kids. And it gave me hope. Like, okay, what I heard her saying and what the message really was like, Mandy, as long as you're doing your work. Yeah. And you are being self-aware, you are owning your stuff, you are practicing feedback, you are, you know, forgiving and apologizing and all of those things, and modeling that, right? Like, so when COVID happened, I was trying to teach Juniper her kindergarten lesson, which sounds like it should be really easy. Which it was, but it convicted me. I have like a whole spiritual moment reading this story with her on the iPad, because it was about bears, and it was saying, the literal sentence was, and the baby bears watched the mama bear so they knew what to do. And I feel like it used the word everything in there, because it was very extreme. It was like, and the baby bears watched everything the mama bear did so they knew what to do. Wow. And I read that and was like, it was a moment, because obviously this was like 5 years ago and I'm still talking about it. But this idea that our kids are watching us, like they are watching us so that they know how to be. And so I can't fix other people. I can't control how other people interact with my children. I can't control their friends. I can't control who they're dating. I can't control other family members. Like I literally can't control them. I can help create environments that are like best case scenario. But you know, I can't keep them from a relationship with my co-parent, with their dad. First of all, that's like, I mean, that's a whole other episode, I think, too, of like, how do you foster and nurture a relationship with someone who you might not care for, right? Like, and it might be a strong not caring for someone. I mean, maybe not. Maybe it was all amicable when you split and all of that. But for the most part, when people divorce, there's a lot of strong feelings both ways, and a lot of what I think is like maybe disrespect for each other's way of doing things. And I think the best gift we can offer our kids is the permission to love their other parent fully. And I think it's really hard to do that. I do not think that's easy. So when I think about this idea of like what my therapist is saying of like it takes one emotionally intelligent parent, and I don't even mean you have to have it all figured out, but you're committed to growing, a growth mindset, right? Like you're committed to having an environment that's healthy. That is more influential, or just as influential as having, you know, interactions with dysfunction. And I think about the fact that our kids are watching us. For both of us, our kids are watching us, and they're also watching the other parents they have. And the reality is our kids will know who we are. We can paint a picture of who we want them to think we are, but our kids will know who we are. Oof. And I think the greatest feedback we can get is like, what are our kids saying about us? I mean, really, I'm not talking about 5-year-olds. They're whack. They don't know. It's like you don't give them the right goldfish and they throw it across the room. They are not in the running for an opinion on your parenting. I'm talking about older kids, and by the time they're teenagers, babe, they got our number. You know what I mean? They know us. They know what's up. Yeah. And the way they would describe us, or the way they talk about us, or whatever it is, it matters. And we should be paying attention because they truly are watching everything we're doing. And that is who they will become. I mean, not necessarily, right? So a lot of us they'll either become like us or decide, I don't want to be like that at all. Yeah. And I don't want to be on that side of it. I don't want to inspire my kids in not being a certain way. Yeah. And so I think it takes a lot of courage to parent like that. I think it's a lot of courage to show up in relationships like that, because the reality is you can show up and be honest like you're talking about, and it actually could break the relationship. And you might learn in that moment that your relationship wasn't what you thought it was. And that is not an easy moment, right? Yeah. But like we tell our kids, and like I would tell anybody, every interaction is good information for you to have so you can make a wise decision. If you look at it like that interaction of your relationship falling apart, can you reframe it to, that's good information for me to have, because now let me run it through the filter of, was that like a healthy response? Was that what healthy relationships look like? And I hope that our kids, and I hope that we have enough information and enough tools in our tool belt to understand if it was good or not, you know? And so what we are telling our kids, and what I hope to teach them, it's like, I'm not going to save them out of every relationship issue. Right. But I hope they walk out of here with the tools to be able to say, that's not how healthy people respond. That's not how honest people respond. That's how an insecure person responds. That's good. I hope they can name all of that, just like I hope we can too. And I think it took me a long time to be able to name stuff like that. Yeah. And especially when you grow up a certain way and you grow up with certain patterns, you might not even know there's another way to live. It might take you a while. And so I think for raising our children, I think one of the greatest tools, one of the best tools is for them to be able to discern what is healthy and what isn't. Yeah. And it's really hard to stand by and watch someone struggle with that. You watch them kind of be mistreated or overlooked, or you watch them being snubbed in a relationship. And it's really hard to sit there and watch, because I can name it, right? I can name, if he wanted to, he would. I can name it.
Right.
But each of us has to get there, you know? And
Right.
so that was a really long bunny trail to address what you're saying about honesty in a relationship. You and I value that so much, but it doesn't always land great. But the thing is, I know there will never be, I know it. I just know it. There's never going to be a time that when we honestly come to each other, and even if it's clunky, right? Even if it's traffic circle style, and we clunk it out like that.
Yeah.
I am never afraid that I'm going to get stonewalled by you. I am never afraid that this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, that this is it. Well, actually, when you pulled out to get the creamer, I was like, I think he's coming back with the creamer, but like, I don't know how many minutes this guy needs. But the reassurance that I have in our relationship is that, like, honesty is never going to be punished, even if it comes out clunky. And I think we try to raise our kids like that too. Honesty isn't going to be punished. Actually, honesty is going to be celebrated. Now, if we have to like help you understand how to say that better, you know, like when one of our first Christmases together, and I gave Ezrael that fox blanket.
That fox blanket.
And I was so hype. It was the cutest thing. And it had like a whole like hood on it. And he opened it and was like, I hate this. And then set it aside. That was our first Christmas
Brutal
together.
Honesty.
Yeah. So there's such a thing as like, hey, could we say that different next time?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But honesty in a relationship should never break the relationship unless the honesty is, hey, this is over. Then I guess it would end the relationship. And that's okay too.
Which is probably for the better.
Honestly.
Yeah.
How many times should that conversation happen sooner than it does?
Yeah.
Because some endings are necessary.
Which is hard to talk about in the church.
Tell me more. We took it on. We are in church now. Listen, I don't know who's running this podcast. Go ahead. What are you saying?
Well, I won't stay here too long. Maybe this is for another episode, but I do think in the church, as Christians, we have a very hard time having the conversation of necessary endings.
Gotcha.
Especially when it comes to divorce. We have
Okay. So I do have, in my very unorganized show notes, I do have an episode in the works of marriage and divorce in the church. Mm-hmm. Maybe the episode's called Divorce Like Jesus. I don't know. That feels, it feels a little hot topic-y.
I like it though.
But anyway, I definitely want to talk about that because I think for sure there are necessary endings that get overlooked because of lots of reasons. And the thing is, as much as I'm talking about being an emotionally healthy parent, I definitely want to just name that nobody's out of the woods. We all still have to grow. And I think you had a realization this week that, thinking, oh, I'm doing all this work, or I'm thinking about doing all this work to be healthier, but you had a realization maybe that, shoot, I may not be as healthy as I thought I was.
I'm still in it. And it came from a comment on the sideline of my son's soccer game this week that made me realize, wait, I think some of that behavior, some of the way he's responding comes from me. I think he learned that from me.
And this wasn't like positive behavior.
And it wasn't a positive behavior. It wasn't a positive reaction he was giving. It was something that when I looked at it, I was disappointed, but then immediately realized he might have gotten that from me, actually. I think I've responded that way.
Yeah, no. When somebody came up to me once and they're like, are you actually surprised that you have really sassy daughters? I'm like, no. No, I know exactly where that comes from. And I'll say, as funny as it is sometimes, there are some times where I'm cringing because, and I hear myself in them. So there's, I think it's good to mention, like, we're not done growing, and that's a growth mindset, right? Like, we're not done growing. We're not done working towards health. we also need to name that we need to give, if you are co-parenting, if you're in that situation, we have to be able to give that person an opportunity to grow too.
That's right.
I think what is dysfunctional is freeze framing someone.
That's right.
That just because they were that way when you were married, that they're always going to be that way. It's not true.
That's
a divorce usually changes people. Usually. I mean, maybe not, but over time, I think so. Even if they were that way 5 years ago while you're co-parenting, it doesn't mean that they can't change. And so I think it's really important that we name that, like, or that I even named that. At the time I brought that up to my therapist, my co-parenting relationship was really different than it is today. And my anxiety about co-parenting is different today because with time I've kind of chilled out more. And maybe that's because I'm watching my kids become teenagers, well, 2 out of 3, and I'm kind of seeing more of the fruit of all the seeds that have been planted over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see that, okay, maybe they can name dysfunction. And even if they can't in a relationship, even if they're having a hard time, they're at least coming to me to talk about it, or they're talking to someone, right? And so I do think it's important to just mention that it's never helpful to villainize our exes. It's never helpful to make them the bad guy. And if you are dating someone who's been divorced, or if you're dating someone who's broken up with someone and all they do is villainize the other person, I think that's a deep orange flag.
A very, very deep orange flag.
Yeah.
I think the fruit of growth is in being able to be introspective.
Yeah.
To reflect on the inner workings of your contribution, and that was one of the things that was very vital to my healing, was not looking to my first wife as the problem and the issues that were in me. Looking in me for the issues that are in me.
Yeah.
What do I need to surrender? What do I need to let go of? Under all of the dysfunctional behaviors that I contributed, what was at the root? Okay, Lord, I need healing for this. Here it is. Take me through the journey of healing, as bad as it hurts. Because it hurts to get to a point at a soccer game where you realize the way my son's acting, actually, he might have got from me. I got some work to do. Where I thought I was really far along, now I'm recognizing, okay. And then by the grace of God, and it is the grace of God, later that afternoon, my mom visited and sort of confirmed, because we were just talking and it came up in conversation, again, by the grace of God, where she mentioned some of my childhood moments where I acted that way too. And it made me realize,
it made his responses less baffling, I think. It took away the, like, why is he acting like this, when it's really like, oh, there's a reason there's acting like this. There's a
pattern that's being repeated.
Yeah.
I contributed to the repetition of that pattern. I am the one that needs to end it. Lord, here I am. Help me end this pattern.
Yeah. So when it comes to, I think, let's go back to what we were talking about, honesty.
Mm-hmm.
If it takes a lot to be honest in that moment. It doesn't feel great to have to say, yeah, no, I think my kid definitely takes after me in that not flattering way that they're acting.
Right.
But the honesty should lead to healing. The honesty should lead to growth. The honesty should lead to, like, a better outcome eventually, I think. Because the more that I think that the whole thing about parenting is, like, it's not about changing the behavior of our kids. Like, that's just surface level.
Right.
Mostly, I think it comes from changing ourselves and showing up differently and recognizing when we've contributed something that's not great.
Yeah.
And the more we can commit to doing that, I do think the healthier our relationships would be. And that's what we're modeling for our kids. That's what we're offering them. Hey, in healthy relationships, you should be allowed to ask questions. In healthy relationships, your partner, your friend, your coworker should be able, or you should expect that you can have answers.
Yeah.
When there's blanks that need filled in. There shouldn't just be giant secrets or gaps or things like that in healthy relationships. Like when our kids start watching us model that, either with them, with each other, with our friends, they will model it too. So just like they're modeling our really unfortunate behaviors and our unfortunate tendencies, that gives me hope that they could also model the great ones. And so as soon as we see the ones that aren't great and we start addressing it, as much as that like hurts our pride and our ego maybe, or makes us feel embarrassed, it is the kind of the key to changing course, because if they can mimic our bad behaviors, then they can mimic our good ones.
That's right.
You know? And so I feel like when it comes to this idea of honesty, I see it laid out in scripture too, especially like, I think the way we interact with people here on earth is an indication, like in our closest relationships, it's an indication of our connection to God, right? Like, so, and I say that in this way, like if I'm unable to really have honest conversations with humans, I wonder how honest I'm being with God.
Ooh, babe.
So am I saying it again for the people in the back? There's nobody in here actually, it's just us. But I think that. So I think because we practice, you know, in our relationship with God, we practice being with the healthiest, you know, relationship that we have. And it's like, there's nothing that's off limits. And some of us approach God like there's stuff off limits.
Ooh.
And there's nothing off limits to bring to him. And I have these two very different examples in scripture that I go to. One is when Hezekiah is dying and he gets the news like from a prophet that like, hey, your days are numbered, you're about to die. And he weeps bitterly. He doesn't just go, oh, okay, and then pretend like it's fine. He weeps bitterly and says to God, hey, I've served you my whole life. I've given you everything. Is there any way you could just spare my life a little longer? And the Lord does. He's like, okay, thank you for your honesty. He doesn't say it like that. This is my paraphrase. Thank you for your honesty, Hezekiah. I'm going to add 15 years to your life. And then you see Jesus show up in the garden and pray a very honest prayer that says, God, could you take this from me? Like, the assignment you've given me is like so incredibly crushing. Is there any way you could take it?
Yeah.
If not, okay, but is there any way you could take it?
Yeah. And even David showing up to the Lord on some, Lord, crush my enemies. You know what I'm saying? Take them down. Like just almost sounding vindictive, almost sounding like I want revenge. But like that was his honest feeling at the time.
Well, the thing about David is that he would pray that at the beginning, but you in every psalm you can get to, or every prayer you can get to where that honesty was like the gateway into self-reflection. Yeah. The honesty was the gateway into gratitude, right? So it's like, yeah, crush my enemies. Like they're making me so angry. They're out to get me. I hate them. God, why do they get to prosper? And then you get to the end of it and it's like, but God, you see my heart and you actually see all the dark parts of my heart too. Yeah. And so God, would you deal with me? Or God, you've been faithful my whole life. So even while it looks like everybody's prospering but me, God, I realize, no, you're good to me. And I think that's where honesty gets us. And so I think if you're having, when Jesus was praying that prayer of like, can you take it? But God doesn't take it. We know the ending of that story, right? Right. God doesn't take away the assignment and he must still go to the cross. Yeah. And I see both of those examples, and now you've offered a third one, but the Hezekiah one and the Jesus one, I see those two examples of like, sometimes we pray and ask God for a different outcome. Sometimes we get it and sometimes we don't, but I don't think that's the main point of the prayer. The point of the prayer is that the honesty is what gets us to the place of surrender. Let's go. Because Hezekiah died anyway, guys. I mean, he got 15 extra years, but he ain't alive today. Like, we're all going to die, even if God grants you extra time. Right. Like, our time will end at some point. It's not an infinite miracle, right? So this is just like, oh, okay. No, there's still a timestamp on your life. So Hezekiah was granted extra time. But what I think matters in that scenario is seeing the heart of God. Yeah. Seeing that God cared about the prayer, that Hezekiah was able to show up and weep bitterly to ask for something, and God heard him and was moved to compassion. Then you see Jesus praying, asking, can you remove this? And God says no to that, but is moved to so much compassion, right? Because that that act of going to the cross was for all time, for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think it's the outcome might not be what we want, but the honesty, I think the honesty in our relationship with God, right? Showing up and saying, I know you don't abandon me, but I sure feel alone. Like your word says you don't abandon me, but I feel very alone.
Yeah.
God, what's up? Or God, I'm watching the people around me prosper and get everything they've been praying for, and I feel really forgotten.
Yeah.
You say you don't forget, but I feel it, right? Showing up like that, and in that space, developing this idea that honest conversations are actually good and healthy.
And they lead to healing.
And they lead to healing, translates. And they also lead to us being able to better handle ourselves.
Ooh.
Like they lead, so in an honest conversation with God, you are not always going to get a yes. I mean, even Jesus, the Savior of the world, didn't get a yes. Okay? Right. So when you get a no, stop acting like it's the worst thing's ever happened to you. I mean, no's are good too.
Yeah.
They're good too.
And if you must show the Lord that you feel like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, show him that too so he can heal that. You can't heal what you don't reveal.
Yeah.
And if even if your complaint that I don't think I should have gotten a no, it's a good thing I'm praying for. Well, show him that too so he can deal with that as well.
Exactly. The whole point is that like honesty is meant to deepen that connection. And you said way back at like the beginning of this, you made a comment, would you rather be right or would you rather stay connected? And I think that's actually my new question. Not would you rather be right or happy? I think on an even deeper level, it should be, would you rather be right or would you rather stay connected? Now that I'm raising teenagers, the reality is that connection, it means so much to me, like obviously to our children, and it's very fragile in the teenage years. They have the ability to disconnect from you, right? They have more freedoms. They have a driver's license, they do not have to tell you everything. It's not like when they're 3 and they can't keep a secret. Anything that you're invited to into your teenager's life is like a gift and a blessing and a privilege. And the connection that we have with our kids is really the most important thing. And so I think about that, and I think about, well, do I want to be right? Because I'm probably right about this relationship I'm watching you in. I'm probably right about this and that. But like, I want to stay connected more than anything. And so I have to continue to have my edges soften and ask the Lord, is this a time to speak up or no? Is this a time to like say the thing or not? And in my relationship with my teenagers, but I think at the end of the day, being able to have honest conversations in our relationships, that is the true litmus test of whether you have a real connection or not. Like that is, if you can't have an honest conversation, then that is your information. And now you get to make a decision. Is this someone you keep in your inner circle? Or is this someone who needs to move out to a different circle because it can't withstand an honest conversation.
Right.
And if you can't have an honest conversation, what do you have? I mean, you really don't have a lot. But if that's your marriage or that's your parenting, these aren't relationships where you just move people to other circles, right? This isn't the same as a friend or a coworker.
Right.
These are people you obviously want in your inner circle. So what do you have to do to heal that, right? Like, what do you and I do when we don't feel like we can be honest with each other?
Well, I know one thing that I've noticed we actually do when we can't be honest with each other, we go to the one who we can be honest with. We do joke. I mean, we do use a phrase like, yo, you better go to your prayer closet. Yeah. And I think that has been, I know this is going to sound very cliche, but our saving grace, literally saving grace. Like it's saving us. It's redeeming us. And it's been grace. It's been the goodness of God on us that we have him to come to with our honest thoughts and feelings when we can't offer them to each other. Yeah. And then usually after that, we're able to have a conversation. But I would, I think that I've said that before on here, that is the thing that I think holds us together, is that we both know we're each going to go do our work and we're each going to go take the time to figure ourselves out, and then come back together to have this conversation. And we don't do it great. It's clunky a lot of times.
I don't know. I thought we had like a really awesome conversation where we were kind of working through our difference in opinion on how we parent a teenager. And we had a conversation out in the living room, and one of our kids happened to be there witnessing it. And I thought, wow, we really gave her a great example of healthy communication. I was like literally so proud of myself
that was dope.
internally.
That was dope.
Yeah, but what did she say? She goes, guys, that was like so annoying to have to sit through. Like, can you just like figure yourselves out? I'm like, we literally figured it out in the best way possible.
That is what we are doing.
Yeah, and you're welcome. So anyway, kids, they don't really appreciate it all. But anyway, I think to wrap this all up, my guest that was supposed to be on for the first 5 minutes ended up just being on the episode. So welcome, Jeo, to Terry On.
Thanks for having me, babe.
Yeah. And I think, for me and you, it feels really great to be in a relationship where honesty is celebrated. And again, not always done perfectly and not always celebrated right away. But the amount of anxiety that we don't have because we know that we're not going to be punished for showing up in an honest way, right? Really matters, I think, to both of us. Yeah. And I think we're really committed to not only doing this with each other, we're also committed to doing this in our friendships and in our parenting relationship, and really committed to continuing to be not dysfunctional, right? Like noticing it, naming it, and really like that is the gift we are to each other, that we can name like, hey, I see this thing and I'm telling you because I love you.
Right.
It's like maybe a pattern for you, and I think it's affecting the people that you're in a relationship with. And right. I think if we talked about it, and we do that for each other, it's not just one-sided. And I think it matters to have people in our corner that will help us become better.
Yeah.
Whether that's a boss, whether that's a friend, a spouse, one of our kids, whoever it is that points us to like a more redeemed version of ourselves is a gift.
Yeah.
And I think we need to like receive that, because ultimately we're made for connection.
That's right.
And when we lack it, life gets very lonely. And so practicing this idea of, what does a healthy relationship look like? How do we show up honest? Well, it might just start in our prayer closet. It might just start with finally being honest with God about a disappointment, about being overlooked, about feeling betrayed, about something very sad, about something you've lost, whatever it is.
And knowing that he can handle it all.
And believing that lament is the launch pad, yes, for your healing, for connection, for gratitude, for all of it.
That's right.
Because we're here, right? We're all in this messy middle, probably of something, and we're waiting for a season to come, a season to go. We're waiting for a prayer to be answered.
Yeah.
And the whole thing we talk about on is how you do that well.
Yeah.
Well, for this week, the way we're going to do that well is we're going to start being more honest.
Yeah.
And not the mean kind of honest, but just the more honest about ourselves and what's going on inside of us.
Yeah.
And letting the Lord heal those parts, and asking God to bring real people into your life that can help you, that are safe people to be honest with. I think that really matters. And that is how we're going to tarry on this week.
That's right.
Does that sound great?
I love it. Let's do it.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the episode.
Me,
yeah, of course. We're going to go over some ground rules for next time if you ever show up on here again. How many terms of endearment you can use, etc.
Okay, my queen. I'm just going to get them all out the way right now, maybe that.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, everybody. I hope you have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, tarry on.